Welcome to the A to Z of licensed games, a series of vids about games that take something from something yada yada yada. Not many games of major note in the letter K, to be honest. A few games fought for their dubious honour have been highlighted in this series, but they all fell short due to either being way too massive to cover properly, being too simple to cover properly, me having zero interest in the licence itself, and other reasons. We'll go into more detail in the honourable mentions. For now though, here's the last game standing. Krull, an arcade game from 1983. Yeah, we're kicking it old school. It's the easiest one for me to do, frankly. Krull is one of the earliest movie tie-ins around, and it's regarded as one of the first really good ones to boot, right up there with Star Wars and the game it probably draws the most comparisons with, Tron. Both consist of a series of connected minigames. The only trouble is that Tron was a very successful movie indeed, and Krull was quite a big flop. And damn right too, if my memory serves correctly, as it was really quite naff. As a result, the game of the movie is kind of obscure these days, but believe it or not, it is quite good. Actually, the gameplay itself is less Tron and more Robotron, especially after you assemble the clave in the first stage. The next 3 levels are all variations on the good old arena shooter, with slayers spawning everywhere and the firing controlled with dual sticks. The claves tear through everything, but you can only fire off 4 at a time, so you have to be a little careful. It's quite a challenging game, particularly the 3rd level where you have to rescue your crew, although the 4th level with the whopping great hexagon is easily my favourite, it looks so good. The 5th and final level is a straight one towards Princess Lysa while avoiding the beast. Kinda simple actually, and then the whole thing loops until you kick the bucket. Like a lot of old arcade games, it also has some pretty kick-ass sound, which obviously helps matters a great deal. Ah yeah, I can dig that sort of sound anytime. Krull is a fine title. Not on the same level as Tron, but it's worthy of praise and is probably better than the movie it spawned from. It even resulted in one of the first decent console conversions of a licensed game, the Atari 2600 version, which features different games but takes largely the same format. Whichever one you choose, Krull is worth playing. A solid title from the golden age. You know, just the sort of thing you'd want to see on the second round of Starcade. It is good. Go play it. Righty-ho, let's do the honourable mentions. Some of them are actually pretty famous. Kingdom Hearts, for example. This is a very ambitious licensed game. Square and Disney came together to produce a big RPG where Disney's finest commingle with a bunch of typical Square RPG heroes, and some old favourites to boot. Trouble is, I don't really know that much about it, and it's way too big to try and cover here. It all kinda started with a load of fetch quests based around building a raft, and it kinda bored me to tears a little. But then, it's an RPG, a 60-hour game most likely, so I just can't really judge it here. It's just too big for a 10-minute video, let alone a 30-second honourable mention. So here's something simpler, Kato-chan and Ken-chan, a game for the PC Engine. The licensed part comes from our 2 heroes being real-life Japanese comedians, and here they basically run around and kick things, mostly each other. Kind of amusing actually in places. The game itself's just a nice, simple Wonder Boy-esque platformer, and I certainly don't regret playing it. It's probably better known in the West as JJ and Jeff, which isn't a license at all, but there you go. We move back to the land of music for Kiss Psycho Circus, an FPS from 1999. It's quite nice looking and moody for the time, and to be honest it's a hell of a lot better than the majority of music-based licensed games. It wipes the floor with Journey from the last video, for example. You collect pieces of armour and turn your bland heroes into Kiss members, and you gibble the crap out of loads of grotesque monsters along the way. Not a bad game at all, it only just missed out on being the featured title. No mean feat, cause really I ain't got no love for Kiss. Next up is another Simpsons game, Krusty's Super Fun House, a puzzler where you have to guide rats to their doom, kind of like the inverse version of Lemmings. Quite good actually, and to be honest it's probably the best Simpsons tie-in we'll see for quite some time. And last of all we have King Arthur for the PS2, a hack and slash game based on an almost totally forgotten rubbish movie. The first level actually gave me a bit of hope. There's lots of enemies and you get to play as Titus Pullo, which is always a bonus. The second level, where you play as King Arthur on horseback, controlled like a badger's arse and was quite disappointing. Overall, a very bog-standard PS2 era tie-in, although the crazy ragdolls can be kind of entertaining. Seriously, they just fly all over the place. It's amusing. Today's Shitroom title is more about general licensed game disappointment than something truly awful, and is perhaps more about a TV show than any specific game. It'll also be longer than our featured title, but what the hell, we'll run with it. Now, in the late 1980s, a few people in British television started to realise that games were becoming a big thing, and they started to make TV that was catered towards the nerdy unwashed lot. Knightmare is perhaps the best remembered of all these shows, a game show where 3 kids would try their best to guide their adventurer through a sprawling maze of virtual green screen dungeons, like a point and click game only with real people. Now, we've covered so many games that were inspired by TV shows or movies, and well, here's the opposite, a TV show inspired by computer games. So what's it doing here? Because Knightmare wasn't shit, surely. And indeed it wasn't. It was a great kids show, no matter who you were. It was all in the window dressing. It wouldn't have worked without Trigard, played with sinister relish by Hugo Myatt, casting his wry eye over all the proceedings and shaking his weary head at the adventurer's inevitable mishaps. The format was okay, but the presentation brought it together. And if you were a little Brit kid in the 1980s screaming at the telly whenever those fellow children got it wrong, chances are you wanted to play Knightmare more than anything else in the world. And that's where the games come in. Hell, all the elements are already in the show, so you'd think that making a Knightmare tie-in game would be a piece of piss, wouldn't ya? And obviously you can now deduce that it wasn't, and that the following handful of games aren't quite up to snuff. The Amiga game gets it all wrong right from the off. It's a dungeon crawler where you control 4 people. Now, Knightmare is for 1 person only, something that would be grasped by anyone who'd watched even the first minute of a show. The surroundings aren't even anything like Knightmare. In fact, there's basically nothing here that resembles the show. It's just a dungeon crawler. You may as well play Dungeon Master. It's not a bad dungeon crawler, if you like that sort of thing. It's certainly very difficult and obtuse and all that good shit, but frankly it stinks as a tie-in for Knightmare, and it would certainly leave the kiddies that the show was aimed at befuddled, disappointed, and quite possibly in tears. So, you know, pretty poor show, guys. The earlier game, shown here for the Spectrum, actually is a single-person adventure, and does feature Trigard admonishing you anytime you get something wrong. Trouble is, it's pretty crap. The menu system is horribly confusing, and just seems to list all the items in the game whenever you want to pick up something, as opposed to just the items that are in that room. It uses the number row for controls as well, a cardinal sin that makes it a pain in the arse to do so much as tell left from frickin' right. The majority of people who played this game likely never even got past the second room, and that's not because it's tough or anything, but because the design is just so awful.
Ooh, nasty.
So, on the whole, Knightmare never got the tie-in it deserved. It brought the video game style to the silver screen, actually made it work, and this is the thanks it got. Maybe it was just too obvious for anyone to grasp, but for whatever reason it simply didn't work out, and these 2 games whitely languish in obscurity, and it is there that they shall stay. Spellcasting, F-U-C-K-O-F-F. And so, another video is in the books. Next time, things get better. Capcom released one of their best remembered and most challenging NES titles. There's another classic film adaptation involving Disney, a bunch of games where you play with children's toys, and finally the Shitroom will come down with a bad case of diarrhea. But that'll all have to wait until the next vid, so clench until then. Thanks for watching, and wherever you are, whoever you be, have a good one, take care, and I'll see you next time.